Well, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome and thanks for joining us on the Crexi Podcast. This is an insider look at all things commercial real estate. Each week, we sit down with some commercial real estate experts to uncover trends, insights, and strategies that are shaping the industry today. I'm really excited to have these two guests with us today, Reece and Costel Vanatoru. I've had the pleasure of knowing these guys for a while, and I think you're going to enjoy this. Alex is just a little background on everybody here. Reece is what I would call a serial entrepreneur. He's he's a real estate expert with over 30 years of experience building and selling companies. He manages commercial real estate and marketing technology investments, making technology investments. He's a University of Florida graduate with an accounting degree. He currently owns and manages over 1.5 million square foot of mixed use real estate across multiple states, focusing on power saving technologies, smart site planning, and delivering high quality, affordable tenant space. As a strategic investor along the way, which we're going to get into a little bit later because Alex has a lot, he has a lot to talk about. As a strategic investor, Alex has been able to demonstrate really sort of remarkable insight into early investments. He's invested in companies like DraftKings, Crexi, happens to be an investor in Crexi early on, Lyft, Adapar, Heavy AI, Clubhouse, and if I miss one, Alex, you can chime in, Flexport, SoFi, Matterport, Ripple, and Airbnb, just to name a few. This just kind of showcases his depth of understanding of market trends and the ability to kind of identify transformative business models. And so he's built, sold multiple companies. His leadership style combines pragmatic, fostering team environments that encourage innovation and business growth through his pursuit of excellence and understanding of global market dynamics. Not only is he a real estate investor, he is a big time investor in a lot of different areas. And now I always thought of Costel, he's like a rock star. He only has one name, but Costel Vanatoru.
I like that, Rockstar
Yeah,
Costel.
yeah. He just needs one name. He's kind of like Prince or
Yeah.
Bon Jovi, right? So he's the founder of Vanald and Associates. He has a very distinguished commercial real estate brokerage career. He's done hundreds of millions of dollars in sale transactions. He's done millions of square feet of leasing. He was a very early adopter of the Crexi auction platform and the Crexi platform in general, along with Alex. He has a very interesting background. He was born in communist Romania, immigrated to the United States in 1977 at the age of 20. You didn't know that. You didn't know I knew all that, did you? And, with very little money, no real formal job skills. He's worked his way up from working in hospitality into real estate, primarily during the 2009 financial crisis. And he's understood along the way that adding more value than the competition goes a long way. And I think that, he's also mastered land planning skills, creative professional conceptual site planning and things like that bring a lot of value to his clients. And again, as an early adopter of the Crexi auction platform, I think we've sold 8 or 10 assets for you guys in the auction platform
More like
so
20, I
far.
think.
Yeah, I think it's more
Is it
like
more
20.
like 20? More
Yeah.
like 20. Okay, so
We're
yeah,
going up
early
there anyway.
adopters. Yeah, and Costel is also a Crexi Platinum Broker Award winner 2022 through 2025. And his clients really trust him. He's transparent and he really knows how to unlock opportunities in the commercial real estate space. Having said that, welcome to both of you. Really happy that you've joined. And I think one of the things I'd like to just sort of start with is you guys have a very unique relationship, in my opinion, right? You're not just business partners. You guys are friends. You hang out together and you've been doing this for a long time together. And so one of the questions I just like, how did you guys meet originally? How did you get started with this relationship? Because it's a little unusual for broker, owner, operator, to have such a close knit relationship on multi levels in the business, right? And so, how did that happen? Either one.
Costel, you want to tell me how it happened, bud?
Well, yeah, sure. So in about, I want to say probably 2011-ish, or so. I was working with the part I was new in the commercial space, and I got to meet Alex through that connection at that point. Just kind of little by little, we did business, and I think when we got, if you want to say closer, was around 2013. I think Alex, right when we started the escape game.
Yeah, it was somewhere in
Oh,
that neighborhood. I bought some Tuffy tires. I was buying some Tuffy tires for a broker that Costel worked for. And in that sort of process, I got to really respect and admire his work ethic, his work product. He was doing a lot of things for the broker that I thought were super cool, innovative stuff that I hadn't really seen at the time that was kind of like forward thinking. And so uh, I always thought of him as a great real estate professional.
Yeah. So again, you guys long-term relationship, and sometimes the broker owner relationship sometimes a little difficult, right? Because sometimes Costel has to tell you some information you may not really want to hear, value wise, and things like that. And having known both you guys really do trust each other, and you have a very interesting relationship in this market. And I think it's awesome, and we've really enjoyed working with you guys since 2020, right
same
when
here,
we
brother.
started the auction. Alex, you worked all over the world, different industries. What drew you specifically? Because I believe you spent some time in Asia, right? You were abroad for a while. And what drew you specifically into U.S. commercial real estate ownership? Because I know it's not your main business. You have a whole bunch of other things that you do, and real estate is just one of them.
Yeah, the big thing was I had a mentor when I was starting out in business, when I was in actually the Pokemon business. And we were making great money in that business. And it was a gentleman that lived down the street from me, and he was a retired Air Force colonel, and he came to work for me. But one of the requirements that he had to come to work for me was that I would take 50% of my net earnings and put it into real estate. And I was kind of really wasn't real estate really wasn't on my radar per se. I mean, I understood houses and buying things like that, but not commercial. And he just swore up and down. He's like, "Look, I'm 65. One of the regrets I have is that I didn't invest in commercial real estate. I didn't invest enough in real estate in general. And if I had it to do over again, I would have done that. And so I want you to do that." And so I valued that input. And from that point on, as we made money each year, we would harvest some of those net profits and put them back into commercial real estate opportunities. And then I was fortunate enough to be with some other partners that were mentors of mine that knew how to pick quality commercial real estate. And so I could add cash to the deals at the time. They had sort of the knowledge base, and together we were able to form some pretty nice projects.
So, yeah, I think everybody needs a good mentor, right? Somebody like that giving you good advice. How old were you at that time? Just curious.
28. Yeah, about 28 years old. Yeah. No, I think mentors, I mean, I think you got to have more than one, right? When I seek out mentors in my life, in every aspect of my life. I think there's people that just do things better than yourself, and you have to recognize that, and then try to emulate that if you can.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I have several. I've had some very influential ones along the way, been very helpful to me. So let's go back for a second, right? Like I said, you guys were early adopters of the Crexi auction platform, and not only Alex. I don't think because you were just happened to be an investor in Crexi. I'm curious, Costel, starting with the auction platform, what initially excited you about doing that? Because I don't know if you'd done much of that prior to starting to do that with us, and so
No,
where did you see the value there?
yeah, no, I haven't done it at all. I knew of auctions, obviously, they're like 10x and such, and Alex had bought stuff at auction before, so I sort of understood the way they work. And at first, honestly, I didn't know what to think, right? Because you just, you had that perceived, that stigma, the old stigma, where auctions were all about distressed property and so on and so forth. But really, the attraction is, I think, first of all, you have a lot of exposure all of a sudden, right? So you can be on a platform, let's say like Crexi, that's going to put it out there worldwide. So you do get the exposure. I sort of like the transparency of it as well, right? So you have this clear and competition going, you know what I mean, for your property. So, and of course, the other thing that's really nice is the fact that you have a team behind you. So you're not just a broker. So, I thought that was really nice because, you get massive amount of leads and, you guys, as in this case, your team, the behind the scenes team really, really helps out. So all of a sudden as a broker, a single broker, for instance, you have, 3, 4, or 5 people behind you that work towards the same goal. So, those are some of the things that really, attract me to it. Of course, it was a little nerve wracking at first. And I thought, okay, well, how's this going to play out? Are we going to get the valuation that we want? Are we going to get, what we need from it? And we did actually. So yes, that was that.
Well, I think it's interesting you pointed out that, there is some stigma around the auction platform that it's just distressed or it's foreclosed on or courthouse steps. And I don't think, the 20 assets that we've sold for you guys, none of them were distressed.
Not even
None of
close.
them
No.
were, not even
Mhm.
close. Right. And they all, my recollection, all went really well. And
Mhm.
so we kind of find, that we sell best what people want most. And the whole distress part is just a myth. We really do sell high quality, stabilized, cap rate valued assets, right? And so, and I think part of the big success for us is having brokers like you involved. And Alex, I know you deal with a lot of people, and we deal with a lot of brokers, and we see a lot of brokers, and there's a lot of good ones out there. But the difference between a good broker and a great broker, Alex, any comments on that?
Yeah,
Because
I mean, I think, when I look at brokers in general, there's a lot of good brokers. I mean, a good broker is someone who really understands the commercial space and understands the where trends are headed, right? I think the great brokers are just like anything, right? They go that extra mile to either understand it on a more nuanced level, and they're more. I think, like for instance, they're more transparent. The great brokers don't need your business a lot of times. So they're apt to just tell you the kind of open truths about things like, hey, that valuation won't work. I think a lot of brokers make the mistake of wanting to get listings, right? And they, there's a there is a sometimes a desire to inflate or overestimate the value of a listing in order to capture a listing, right? You go to an owner and you say, hey, look, that building's worth $3 million when it might be worth $2 million. And the idea being that the owner's excited about that price point and the owner signs up with you. But then, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months down the road, when you don't have any offers on it, you invariably have to go back to the owner and tell them, hey, we got to have a price decrease. And I think that just starts to ebb away at your credibility. I think it's better for owners if the brokers are transparent. They say, look, this is worth $2 million. If the owner doesn't agree with it, then obviously, he has other alternatives. But why would you want to waste your time as a broker selling property that is overpriced?
Yeah, and I guess that goes back to the trust, right? If you're not getting honest feedback from your broker, at the end of the day, that'll show up, and then you lose trust. And again, I know you guys have a long-term relationship, and maybe Costel Alex is kind of the dream client, right? Because he listens to you. He's a market guy. He
He doesn't
listens to the
always listen.
market.
Let's be clear.
Does it?
No, but I mean, and I have many opinions too. He can tell you that. So there's no, I just sorry to interrupt you, but he is a dream client in the sense that he really understands the business, and he is in the business to be in the business and to be there for the long term, So, it's much easier to work with people that one understand it, second have realistic expectations that you can talk to, you can debate through things, right? So a lot of times, we sit and talk, and we don't agree always on everything, but we talk through things, and I listen, he listens, and sometimes he sees my point, and other times I end up seeing his point. So it really goes both ways. It goes full circle, and he understands that it's in a deal. Really, everybody has to win a little bit. You can't just have a winning party all the time. So everyone has to feel good about the deal. Same with tenants with leasing. If we can put a deal together, he doesn't shy away from doing build outs, from doing, as opposed to some owners, and I've worked with a few in the past, and not all of them are like that, but they expect to really put nothing and for the tenant to pay them top dollar and fork out a bunch of money and do everything. And eventually Alex ends up buying their building, a few years down the road, because that model just doesn't really work. I mean, it might work sometimes.
I think too, and you do a little bit of everything for Alex too, right, Costel? I mean, you do leasing, you do sales, you help him with acquisitions, right? A little bit of
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
with him.
yeah. Yeah. It's mostly on
And then
on
plus
the
back
sell and
to
leasing side, but yeah.
And then back to that, you guys hang out together too, right? I mean, you guys are like
Yeah.
friends. You're not just business partners, right? Now. All right. Well, good. Maybe shifting gears a little bit. So, Alex, you've had great, vision into up and coming companies that were disruptive a little bit, and you made early on investments with some pretty big names, Crexi included. So, when you're looking at even a property deal, or how do you figure out whether you want to invest in real estate or you want to invest your money in a startup company or, technology company, right? I mean, like I said, real estate is not your only business. So I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about how you think about your investments, right? And maybe real estate, we could stay specific just because, that's our subject matter. But, when you're looking at a deal, what makes you excited about something?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is I think diversity in your portfolio amongst your financial investments is something that has been ingrained in me over my professional career. Even as a child, I remember thinking that you had to be diversified for different things. So I think that's where my interest in being in different financial asset classes really comes from, is that diversity. When I approach a commercial project, I look at it through the lens of the market that the asset is in and what I believe I can do with the asset. There's a lot of personal effort and a lot of the team that I've built here, what I think we can achieve if we were to purchase that property. Can we fix the deferred maintenance issues? Can we increase the rents? Can we make the building more efficient? Can we, you know, lower our CAM rate so we can maybe get a better base rent number? What can we do on our end? Rebidding everything. You do a lot of bidding here. We do a lot of rebidding of insurance all the time. We fight our property taxes if we think that they've been increased. We go out to market, with a roof bid, we might get 5 or 10 of them, not 2. We do a lot of things to really drive costs down here. When I invest in a company, I look at the team that runs the company. Like Crexi, for instance, the reason I invested in Crexi was really Mike DeGiorgio and the team that he had put together. Think that, those are investments that you have no control over, right? Invest in Crexi, once you write a check to Crexi, your money's gone. And so you have to have a lot of faith in that team and their ability to execute and their vision, their ability to attract the right types of resources into the team, whether that's human capital or whether that's software integrations or whatever it is. And so I think to that end, I think they're similar in the sense they both take teams to do it. The investments I make in commercial in companies is I'm sort of investing in another team. The commercial real estate stuff, I'm investing in our team, and I'm looking for, usually I buy other people's mistakes. That's typically the model. I buy something that's, been kicked around a lot and has a lot of hair on it, a lot of deferred maintenance, maybe high vacancy, and that's the perfect fit for us.
So do you okay, so you look for stuff like vacancy, not too much, but
No, a lot.
40.
No, a
What's
lot.
that? Yeah, not a lot. Maybe
Yeah, even
maybe some deferred
100%. I mean,
maintenance.
I'll buy even a vacant building, 100% vacant. I'll buy a building that's vacant. Yeah.
And so when you decide, so we sold 20 properties for you on the auction format, right? Were there any hesitations when we first started doing that with you? And that's one part of the question. And the second part is, you've sold 20 assets, redeploying that money back into real estate or into other opportunity investments. So it's sort of a
So,
two-part question there.
yeah, that's a good question. So, yes, I was definitely hesitant when I first started the auction process because I had been a buyer primarily in the auction process. But what I noticed as a buyer actually is that the bidding had become tighter and tighter, and I was getting priced out of buying assets. And I said to myself, wow, they have there's a rich group of people, not rich in the sense of monetary rich, but intelligent folks in the United States that buy properties at auction. And I said to myself, well, these are real estate people that are buying these things, and they're willing to pay more than me and they're seeing different types of value. So they're able to unlock value at a level that maybe I can't unlock the value. And that's kind of the beauty, right, of anything, is you sort of see that there's other people that do things better than you in certain things. And I said, well, I bet there's assets that we have that we've unlocked all the value that I think we can unlock, that other people can look at and say, well, gee, I can unlock another $1 million out of that property, or I can, do this or do that. Or maybe their time horizons are a little different, or maybe their structure is a little different. And so we started selling with a lot of hesitancy, and it really has done well. I mean, auctions, the thing that's great about auctions is the assurance of the purchase, right? Is I think it's good for both the buyer and the seller. When you buy something at auction, I do think you're typically buying the asset below market value. I think that's just a fact in the auction space. And I'm not going to, for instance, if something would trade at a 7 cap, I think in an auction space, you might sell it at an 8.5 cap. So there is a difference there. But in order to sell it traditionally, you might go through 3 different buyers, and the whole economy during that time might shift on you, or you might miss other opportunities that you could be looking at if you had sold that asset, say at a different cap, maybe a higher cap at the auction process, but with the guarantee that it was going to close. You could then redeploy that money in some other asset class or some other building that you think you can do the same model with. So what I would say is that when we buy a building, we buy them, beat up and ugly. We put a lot of money into them, and then we get them leased up. And then we sell them to an investor that maybe doesn't want the full process of what we went through, but they see a way to unlock some additional value. And Costel and I talk about this all the time. We leave meat on the bone. I mean, all of the deals that we sell at auction, I mean, there's millions of dollars left in those deals for people to make money. And we're fine with that. I mean, from our perspective, it's like we have what we do and they have what they do, and we just keep doing what we do and replicate it.
And Costel, I assume, supports the early on process too, right? When you're evaluating an asset to buy, right? What are the leasing assumptions? What are cap rate assumptions, market rents, that stuff? And can you add square footage? Can you whatever, whatever that value add thing is, right? I mean, he's involved all the way along.
100%. Yeah. He's an integral part of every part of the process. Yeah.
Which again makes you guys great partners, right? And we've had great success with you on the auction platform, and I feel like you've had great success using our auction platform. So I think it's been a good relationship so far. Just one other thing, it's just, if you guys is there one deal in particular that you sold in the auction that you were just, really, really surprised about the outcome, or even disappointed, I guess, if it goes the other way. But I think there were a few that really kind of went beyond your expectations. Can you remember one of those specifically, Costel?
No, I think they all had their moments, right? And it's and the beautiful thing about the auction is, I mean, if you want to call it beautiful, it's really not so beautiful. It's nerve-wracking from a broker standpoint. It's the fact that it's just it's a big unknown, in the sense that you just don't really know. You can have a list of 50 signed registered bidders and 3 or 4 bid, or you can have 4 bidders and all 4 bid. So I think all of them had their fun. I don't know if I had one that I can just single out and say, well, that one really. And the assets that we put out there are good. It's just like Alex was describing, and they're stabilized, they're attractive. So we sort of expect to sell them, right? It's just, sometimes I think, we do better than expected. Other times too, I think, Alex, gets, he becomes a little flexible. So yeah, I think, the one that was disappointing was the only one that we didn't sell, but we did sell it a year later. So, on the same platform. I think that's, out of those, there's only one yeah.
Well, so that's not bad. 1 out of 20.
Yeah. And the only reason they didn't sell is because they had a very short-term lease. So, but then, the tenant renewed for a very long time, and, we're able to sell it, and, that was that. I don't know if that answers your question. I wish I had a more exciting story, but I think they're all exciting in their own way.
Well, I mean, for me, that's great. I've been doing this for a long time, right? And to have a seller and a broker that has transacted 20 times on the auction platform with us, I mean, that's a great story in and of itself. And again, we appreciate your business. And so, Costel, you started using Crexi platform back in 2016, I think, right? Right when
Mm-hmm.
we first. So again, you've been an early adopter, and we have some competitors out there. I mean, what do you like better about Crexi than the other guys? I don't like to
Well,
mention their names.
yeah, I think everybody knows their name. I think, well, at first, so I believe I read about Crexi in it was some commercial real estate magazine. It was very random, right? So I was curious. So I just put in Crexi.com. And even back then in 2016, the platform looked very, if you want to call it modern, but it looked very intuitive, right? Much better than the competition in that sense. So, I signed up for a free account. And at that time, I think everything was free. You didn't have to really pay at all. Even back then, you guys had tools that you offer brokers that the competition, I want to say, well, even I don't even think today they have it. Uh, they're trying a little bit, but they didn't have, like, for instance, like your backend CRM, and you had your back end of the listing, so you could actually see what was going on. You can see who clicked on it. You had their information. It was just a lot more intuitive. And but the other thing was too, the competition was getting more and more expensive, and it was just sort of refreshing to see that there was a second option there. So, and I think very shortly as I signed up, because you guys were in sort of in your beginnings as well. And I want to say it was Tyler, man. I think it was. Tyler called me, and I think he was my rep, if you want to call it. And one thing it stood out immediately was how nice it was to deal with your team. How, and like, the customer service was incredible. And I think most brokers can tell you we're not really used to that from the other side. And it's just because it's like either you take it or you don't take it, and it's going to cost you this much, and we don't really, we're not going to put too much time into you. So, and you guys were the complete opposite. So, and of course, you're the small kid on the block. So at that time, but I started using it. It was free. And then, when you guys came out with the pro, I mean, by then I saw so much value where it was a no brainer, really. So that's really what attracted me
Good to
to it. And
hear.
it was just, yeah. Yeah. And
That's
really
good
what
to
you've
hear.
done year after year after year, not only that, I think you listen to your customer, because your platform has gotten better and better and better and better. And I think, there's been even a couple of things I think that Alex and I suggested some 4 or 5 years ago in conversation. And then, come to find out 3, 4 months later, I go on the platform and it's like, oh, that feature's there. That's listening and caring. So, and your platform is better. There's just no doubt about it. And it's nice to see that now. I don't know if it's 1-to-1, but everyone that's a respectable broker lists on your platform as well. It's almost, in my opinion, if you don't list on Crexi, you're missing out. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I kind of live in my own little world here in the auction space. But yeah, and I think we rely a lot on people like Alex that have great insight into not only what we're doing, but just kind of what's going on everywhere else. And I think we've been very good about listening to our investors, to our broker partners, et cetera. But so that kind of just shifting gears a little bit, Alex. Um, what are you looking at right now? Market trends, capital markets, what kind of asset classes are you thinking about? I mean, the world's in kind of a weird spot right now, and there's certain segments of the commercial real estate business, for example, the office space, very challenged right now, some worse than others. But yeah, so what are you looking at right now? And that would include too, are there other ventures besides just real estate? Are you following some trends, and how do you do that?
Sure. I think when I look at real estate, I think it's very geographical, right? Regional. And so I think that, for instance, in Tampa, Florida, you could buy anything. And I think it would do very well over the next 5 or 10 years because of the growth rate of Tampa in general. As if you went out to Detroit, maybe maybe it wouldn't perform the same way. I think that we're very fortunate to have sort of capture the uh, the Florida growth that we've had over the last decade or so. And so office here in Florida is fantastic. I like retail. I think retail is great. I like industrial. I think industrial is excellent. Multifamily, I think went through a real high a couple 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that multifamily is, to me, I know it's still the darling of investment bankers, but I feel like it's the highest risk asset. I I just feel like at some point they're going to overbuild this and there's going to be a real problem from a multifamily perspective. I think office on the flip side, I think it's so hated right now that I think that's when you want to buy stuff. You want to buy stuff when people hate it, like when people just absolutely hate it. And so to that end, that's kind of where I think about real estate. From a other investments category, I'm doing some stuff in the crypto space, and I'm also doing some stuff and trying to purchase early stage stuff in AI companies as well as robotics and stuff like that. I mean, I see the same thing as probably everybody else, that the world is going more and more to some kind of an automation through AI and through, robotics, over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
So if I gave you $50 million today, what would you invest in? Technology or real estate?
I would definitely split it up. I mean, I think I would do, real estate's great for passive income and your depreciation. You're going to need some real estate to offset some of those other gains you're going to have. And so I would definitely invest some of the money in real estate. And I would, put 5 million of it, maybe 10 million of it at some high risk stuff, some early stage robotic and AI type companies. And then, I think you could also put some money into some real secure stuff, some bonds or whatnot. I think as interest rates come down, those bonds will make good sense in maybe 18 months or so. So,
What if you had to put all of it in one asset class, real estate
wow.
or technology?
Yeah. So if
Just
it was
curious.
all one asset class, I would put it all in real estate, because real estate is to me, the most dependable it's the most dependable class of the three, for many reasons. But one, it's tangible. Two, I'm more in control of it. Three, the depreciation element of it and some of the things we can do with depreciation, with cost segregation analysis and things is just winning on so many levels. You can also increase rents, and you could diversify in that class. So you could do some industrial, you could do some office, you could do some retail, you could do some multifamily. So I think you could do enough diversification both in classes and in areas. You could do some real estate in Texas, you could do some real estate in Arizona, you could do some real estate in North Carolina, some real estate in Florida. And I think you would insulate yourself pretty well to any kind of a downturn.
Still, you got licenses in all those states. Like, he might be keeping you busy here for a while if we gave him that money.
Well, give me the 50 million, Bob, and we'll keep him busy.
I'll get licenses in every state, Bob. I'm going to be
Yeah.
on a tour or on a licensing tour.
I mean, the way you
Yeah.
asked that question, I'm expecting a check today, man. I mean, let's go.
Well, maybe we got to call Mike about that. We'll see how he's
That's
doing.
right.
Yeah, let's call Mike. Anyway, no, well, that was good. I like that. Sort of transitioning to sort of the end. We've heard about your trends. We kind of heard about your investment, strategies. We've talked a bit about, some of your investment background. And I think I did mention you spent time in China, I think, or Europe for a while early on. Did that kind of help forge either sort of your work ethic, your work product, or how you looked at stuff, or what kind of tools you used? Because that's not a normal path for a lot of people, right? Being an
Yeah.
Asian, right?
I mean, I did spend about 20 years in China. What it does is it makes you never want to go to a retail store and buy anything again. That's the one thing it does, which is kind of, bad. But it did open my eyes to how commerce actually works, right? Like, I think if you're domestic only and you kind of, have only been in the US and you haven't been exposed to other companies in international markets, it does give you just kind of a one-sided kind of prism perspective of things. And I think what that opened my eyes to is just how very different things operate in other places in the world, and from a factory perspective as well as from a real estate perspective. And it really, after I spent all my time there, and I think China's an incredible country, but it really forged my love more of the United States. I love the freedom that we have. I love the people that live here. And I think it's, priceless. I think it's something that, everyone should live overseas for a little while. Everybody should go to China and live for a year, or go to, South America and live for a year, or go somewhere and live for a year. Because, look, it's easy to read a travel magazine and see all the pretty pictures of places, but when you go there and you actually integrate yourself with the population, and you live, or you have to make a living there, it does change the perception of a lot. At least for me, it did.
Yeah, interesting. Well, so then I guess along those lines, what kind of advice would you give to a young broker or a young investor kind of trying to build their brand, other than they should use the Crexi auction platform as much as they could? But, what kind of advice would you guys give somebody that's just getting into the business and looking at this, what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them, look, if you're going to be in any business, whether it's the real estate space or whether it's a doctor or whether it's an architect, it doesn't matter what it is, be the best that you can be. And you need to absorb it as uh, much as you can. And you kind of really need to love it. I mean, I love real estate now. I love doing it. I enjoy what I do. And that's what makes it so easy for me to do it, because I love to create and build things and take other things that are old and maybe broken and fix them. That's something that just appeals to me, my personality and like that. So I think young people, find what you like and then really dive into it and become incredible at it. And if you become incredible at it, the money will come. The money will come. It won't happen overnight. Nothing ever happens overnight. But if you really work hard and you become a real professional at something, then the money will follow.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And most new agents, brokers, whatever, what you want to call them, I think they give up way too soon, right? Sometimes maybe they don't have a choice, but for the most part, they think, well, this should happen for me very quick. And, if it didn't happen in a year, then it's certainly never going to happen. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Just like everything, like Alex said, it takes years and it takes persistence. It takes a positive attitude. It takes, learning, 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 learning. It takes, running around and doing just about anything you have to do so you can get it done. But yeah, but that's what it is. You just don't give up too soon. If you give up too soon, and I think I don't have statistics there, but I'm pretty sure that most fail just because of that alone.
I think a lot of people give up too soon, and we've all, I'm probably the oldest guy in the room here, but I've been doing this a really long time, and it took me a really long time until I got to what I could say I was fluent in real estate and fluent in auction. And so I can speak any of those languages, right? And until you get to that point in whatever it is you're doing, it's going to take a while for you to be successful. Well, so what's the next sort of step for you guys? Your partnership. I mean, you guys are out buying more real estate. How do you envision the next 10 years?
As soon as I get that 50 million from you, Bob, my plan is to
Big
immediately
goals.
invest in it. I mean, my plan is to start investing that and maybe triple or quadruple it in 10 years. That's the plan. So the sooner you give me that 50, the quicker we're off to the races.
All right. I'm going to get on
That's a
that as
good
soon
plan.
as we get done here. Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Anything else you guys think we ought to cover, or anything you guys have any other comments? Or, I mean, I think we've kind of covered, everything I had thought about, but anything from you guys, kind of parting words
The only thing I would
like to
say,
share?
and this would be to a broker out there that's thinking about using Crexi and using Crexi as an auction. I would say that I know as a broker that there's probably some, you're kind of nervous about suggesting an owner use an auction platform, because auction platforms by their very nature seems like fire sale pricing, and it seems like you're actually capitulating. And I would say that most of the brokers that I talk to on the auction platforms just wish they had started using it earlier. I think it's the opposite. I think there's some things the broker can do with the owner to help position the asset in a way that will show very well in an auction, and they can get market value for it. I think that, the reality of it is that when you look at real estate, right, we all have the idea of a value, but the true value is what someone will pay for something right then and there, right? And what I think Crexi auction platform does is it exposes the asset to hundreds of thousands of people. And so you're getting this massive exposure. And if you have positioned the asset properly, I think that I think brokers would be pleasantly surprised sometimes at the numbers that they would see at auction. And it's a guaranteed sale, meaning that once the sale is kind of consummated, there's hard money up front and it's non-refundable, and which is good for the seller. It's also good for the buyer, because the buyer knows that they're buying that asset typically probably slightly below market, but the value of that known sale is worth something. And I think that's why it trades slightly below market. You have to give up something to get that known sale, but to me, it's worth it. So that's what I would say.
I think that's right.
Costel?
And yeah, well, I would say, on the flip side, yeah, on a seller that's going to auction, I would say if you trust your broker, which you should, hopefully, but be transparent with your broker about and set up realistic expectations first of all, and then be transparent with your broker and, the auction team when it comes to reserve prices, when it comes to your strategy and everything, because obviously us as brokers and, in cooperation with you guys, we set up bidding strategies based on expectations. And, if those expectations are not real, then it can really just backfire. And otherwise, I would say that more and more buyers, eh, I think they actually prefer to buy at auction these days versus on a traditional sale, which, and I don't predict the future because I can't, but I would almost see this auction process as somewhat the wave of the future in many ways. You know what I mean? Because it is much more transparent. It offers this finality, quick finality. I think, people can do their due diligence up front. And more buyers really do like that. And they understand the process. They understand the fact that these are not distressed properties. They're over there looking, I think, just as much as they're looking on the traditional sales, they're looking on the auction side too. What, in 5 years, and give it another 5 or 15. And with technology, the way it's ramping up, you really just kind of have to stay in tune with technology, right? And just go with the trends, like Alex said. So I guess that would be my 2 cents.
I think that's interesting you say about the buyers because, I've been doing this since 2010. And so, I've always professed that this should be an option of first choice, not the last option that you have after you've had it listed for a year. And then two, on the buyer side, it's interesting you mentioned that, the playing field is very level, right? And if the price goes beyond, where you're willing to pay, you don't have to bid. But, Alex, Costel, and Bob can compete with anyone, right? We can compete with, with Blackstone or whoever the buyer is because it's all a level playing field. Whereas in a
Yep.
traditional, marketing scenario, we get boxed out because the big guy shows up, right? And they're like, oh, well, maybe Alex is not quite as qualified as a Blackstone or whoever. And you may end up losing a deal that you're more qualified to buy than they are.
Or
even
negotiate
though
against
the
yourself.
broker may not. Yeah. And so, I've been saying that for a long time. So it's nice to hear that you think the same thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think savvy buyers use auctions. So the buyers that are on the auction platforms that are buying, those are sophisticated buyers. And I think the people that are selling are sophisticated sellers. And I think you have sophisticated people doing business together. And I think that if you can see that for what it is, that's what's happening.
And I think it's getting more and more, right? I mean,
Yeah.
again, doing this for a long time and it's gotten a lot more acceptable. And, I think our results speak for themselves, right? So again, I appreciate you guys' feedback and anything else you want to cover?
Just wait for that 50, Bob. You got to get it,
Yeah.
man. You got to get it invested.
I got to get to work. Hey, so how can anybody get a hold of you guys? Email, social media? What's the best way if anybody, watching this wants to reach out and just talk to you guys? What's the best way to
Just
get a
my
hold of you?
LinkedIn. Just go to LinkedIn and you can put in Alex Reece and you'll see my LinkedIn profile, and then you can just ping me on that. And I always get back to folks on that.
Yeah.
Costel,
I'm
same
at
with you?
vanwald.com exactly. Or my first name at vanwald.com.
Yeah, see,
Or just
Costel,
Google
he
my
only
name.
needs
Or you can
one
just
name.
Google my name. That's it, exactly. You just Google my name, It's only me and this older guy from Romania that does some type of agriculture or apiculture or something like that. So it's either the broker or the farmer. So that's all you get there.
Either way.
Either way, exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you guys spending time. I was lucky enough to hang out with you guys a little bit in Orlando earlier, and I look forward to coming back here not too long and doing that again. And I really appreciate your insights. I think people will get a lot out of hearing this, and just out of that, I think this is probably a wrap. And so thanks for everybody. Thanks to everybody that's tuned in and is enjoying this. And, don't miss out on the next Crexi podcast. And of course, you can subscribe to the Crexi podcast on your favorite podcast app or YouTube. And, we look forward to seeing you guys next time.